So you know that I am an IEM guy. I know that I am an IEM guy, but what most people probably don't know is that when I am on my desk, half of the time I am using speakers. I've said it many times before, I think that speakers are the best way to experience your music. Music in general is mixed and mastered on 2-channel setup, and so by logic, it's also best reproduced on 2-channel setups. You can see it in my older videos. I rock the Neumann KH120 with the KH750 subwoofer, and till today still remains my reference for near perfect audio. But that's the thing, is that as an audio influencer, a lot of people have asked me variations of the same question, and that is, what is the best speaker that I can buy? And of course, that broad question has too many nuances behind it. So let's drill down into one of the more popular variations of that question, and that is, what is the best desktop speakers that I can buy? There are many options out there. I have my biases, so let me just talk about my favorite desktop speaker, the iLoud Micro. This video is sponsored by me! Hangout.audio is my retail store that sells mainly IEMs as well as portable DAC amps. We ship globally and for free for orders over $30 US. And for those of you who would like to visit us, we have our own retail front at the Hangout. Come on down, grab a cup of coffee or an ice cream, and try our extensive collection of IEMs to your heart's content. But for the rest of you, you can go down to Hangout.audio to buy some of the best IEMs in every price bracket today. Back to the video. For those of you who are new to this channel, no, I'm not generally a speaker reviewer. In fact, my last speaker review was many moons ago. In general, I review IEMs. But just because I specialize in IEMs doesn't mean that I am completely oblivious to every other category of audio equipment. In fact, when it comes to speakers, I actually use them more than IEMs nowadays. As I've said before, it's mainly because I think speakers have more fidelity compared to every other kind of audio reproduction device. But beyond that, it's also a bit of convenience in that I just sit down on a desk and sound. So obviously speakers comes in many shapes and sizes. You have bookshelf speakers and you also have floor standing speakers, both of which can be a lot larger than the desktop speakers that we'll be talking about today. In fact, as you can see from a very apt comparison here, a standard bookshelf speaker is about yay big, and your ideal desktop speaker should be about this size maximum. And as a general rule of thumb in the speaker world, bigger is kind of better. You have better excursion, you can go for higher volumes, you have more space inside to go for more complex circuitry or even just acoustic tubing. There is a lot of benefit when you can upscale the real estate that's inside your speaker. So generally, and I say this in a kind of blanket statement, desktop speakers are not very good. I'm talking about the garbage that you see on your general electronics store, the Logitechs, the Razers, the unnamed Chinese brands with too many vowels. Most of these speakers are terrible. I fully admit to it, to the point where the reputation of the desktop speaker is probably the lowest they've ever been. That is, of course, until a few years ago when we have the iLoud Micro. Now, this is kind of unassuming. You probably wouldn't think too much from its outer appearance, but let me tell you again, from the title of this video as well, these are one of, if not the best desktop speakers that I have ever used. And this is despite everything that happens around it. It has a terrible brand name. What the fuck is iLoud? And the looks, I'll fully admit it, they do not look great. They wouldn't look out of place in a school's computer lab. First, let's rip the band-aid off. These speakers are not cheap. They run at $350 US for a pair. Now, if you're like me and are fairly deep into the audiophile world, then $350 isn't actually that bad for a pair of speakers. In fact, some would even call it budget. But if you come from a world of Logitechs and L-Tech lensings, then these speakers would probably be on the higher side of the budget that you're willing to consider. Let's just run through the gauntlet of what inputs you get on the iLoud Micro. You get a 3.5mm jack as well as an RCA left-right connection. There's also a volume knob, 3 EQ switches, and most interestingly, a Bluetooth button. That's right, the iLoud Micro comes in with Bluetooth connectivity. That's not something you would see commonly in a desktop speaker. Now, setting up the iLoud Micro is actually very simple. There's really only 3 ports that you need to consider. First of all, the DC power input, of course, connecting your device to the speakers, and finally just connecting the left speaker to the right speaker. There's just one cable that links the right speaker to the left speaker, which delivers power straight into the left speaker. Now, unfortunately, unlike a lot of desktop speakers nowadays, you can't simply plug in the iLoud Micro through like USB or even USB-C. So either you plug in the iLoud Micro into your motherboard's 3.5, RCA into a separate preamp, or simply use the Bluetooth functionality. Now let's talk about why the iLoud Micro is such a great little speaker, and as I've said, it is little. The iLoud Micro uses a tiny 3-inch woofer and comes in at only 18 centimeters tall and 9 centimeters wide. But unlike many other desktop speakers in its size, it is a long boy, coming in at almost 14 centimeters deep. But Crin, you may ask, you made your point. The iLoud Micro is indeed micro. It's small, it's compact, it's cute, it has very few bit of functions, but does it actually sound good? Look, here's the thing. I don't review speakers that often. The last speaker review I did was also the only speaker review that I did. I am understandably very selective with what I want to tell the rest of the world what I like. The iLoud Micro is one of the best performing speakers in its size, arguably in its price range, for 2 main reasons. First, when it comes to the on-axis performance, that is to say when the speakers are perfectly positioned towards your head, it has one of the flattest measuring responses I've seen in a speaker of this size. Here are some measurements from the user Napi Lopez. They are not spinorama measurements, that is to say they're not quite industry standard, but they are quasi-anechoic, which means useful enough to gain some data out of it. These speakers are flat, monetary-ish, and would beat out many other speakers, both bigger than it, as well as more expensive. It's not perfect. There will be dips and nulls, but as I've mentioned again, for the size, for the price, this is basically a miracle. And it's not just the on-axis performance, because let's face it, there are going to be cheaper speakers that can attain a similar-ish result. What really impresses me is the bass extension. This thing, this tiny little powerhouse, can go all the way down to 50 Hertz in a quasi-anechoic condition. That is insane. Now, I know in the IM world, we kind of take bass extension for granted. You put your IMs into your ears, get a seal, and it can go all the way down to 2 Hertz. That's normal, that's fine. But in the speaker world, it's a very different picture. Here are some other bookshelves that use bigger woofers, more expensive, more complex designs, and some of them can't even hit 80. And subjectively speaking, I hear it as well. The iLoud Micro has some of the best bass responses I've heard in anything under a 5-inch woofer. In the realest sense of the word, this is a giant killer. So a quick aside, since you would probably be using the Micro on a desk, it also comes in with a desk adjustment EQ. You see, when you put speakers on a desk, what happens is a phenomenon called desk bounce. What that means is that some of the low frequencies literally bounce off the desk into your ears again. What this manifests as is a 200 to 300 Hertz boost, which could sound a bit muddy, a bit boxy, which is what the desk adjustment EQ reduces. So for some of you who are first timers in all of this, you buy an iLoud Micro, you think it sounds a bit muddy, just go to the back, flip the desk EQ, and that might fix your problem. Another aside, if you want the best on-axis performance, what you need is for the tweeter to be pointed directly at your face. But sometimes that might be a bit weird because the desk is literally flat. So the iLoud guys have thought of that. It comes with a little kickstand to just angle the speakers a little bit up so it fires straight at your face. So it's the perfect speaker. Why buy anything else? Well, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. There's a reason why speaker companies would like to have bigger, better drivers. And the main issue is that this thing does not go loud. Again, this is a speaker that is designed purely for desktop use. You're not going to be cranking it up too high, I hope. Save your hearing, but that means that you also can't really use it as a living room speaker or really anything outside of a purely near field experience. The volume linearity, that is to say how the response changes as you increase the volume, is shit. You'll be losing a lot of bass response the moment you hit anything above 80 decibels, and the treble just goes way to shit the moment you hit over 90. So it really is a twofold problem. Again, yes, you can't get it loud, and the moment you try to get it loud, it just sounds terrible. And in fact, the iLoud Micro is really a one-trick pony. You use it purely for desktop use and nothing more. So now let's talk about the competition, and quite frankly, in this space, there is not too many. Some of you may cite the absolutely tiny AT10 or even the AT20, but when it comes to the bass extension, they don't even hold a candle to the Micro. There's also iLoud's own update to the Micro called the Micro Pro, which comes with its own calibration mic as well as double the power output. But it also costs $600 US. I can also compare the Micro with bookshelf speakers like the tried and true JBL 305s, coming in with a 5-inch woofer, slightly cheaper than the Micro, but it's also so much bigger. And of course, some of you might like to throw in the KH80 into the ring, but it's also a lot more expensive. Now, there is a new contender in the space, the Adam D3V. Aaron from Aaron's Audio Corner has given it good reviews. I haven't tried it, so I will reserve my comments, but that is potentially something that you might want to consider as an alternative. In summary, if you're someone who doesn't mind paying a little bit extra, is lacking in desk real estate, but still want a little bit of that fidelity, the iLoud Micro is probably the perfect speaker for you. Now, is it really the best desktop speaker out in the market today? I would say that if you have the cash for the Genelec 8331s, then no, it's not the best. That one would run circles around the Micro. But in terms of something that's at least reasonably priced, the Micro would still stand as one of my default recommendations in the space. At least, maybe, probably, until the Atoms. Now let me just shout out my big money boys. Here are all of your names if you have subscribed to the $20 tier on my Patreon. All 3 of you. And for those who have subscribed to my $30 tier, allow me to speak out your beautiful names. Dennis, crinacle, Andrew, Seraphim, Chemotherapy, Daryl, Treble Well Extended, and Awaken Worm. I thank all of you. Hope you guys all enjoyed my now second speaker review, and now that this one is down, this shall be next. I shall see all of you next week, and don't die. Fuck off.